This is internationally best-selling indie author Michael Brent Collings inviting you to join me at bestsellerlife.com/DCR to unlock my tips, tricks, and hacks for a successful writing career. So go to bestsellerlife.com/DCR and kickstart your writing adventure today.
This is Daniel.
And this is Krebs.
This is Alton.
And I am Matai.
And you're listening to Dungeon Crawlers Radio, the greatest geek podcast out there. Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Dungeon Crawlers, where things are a little different. We do apologize, folks. We love doing these episodes, but there has been a lot of things that have been coming up in life. The first being the fact that Matai has been dealing with some back issues. Krebs is back in action as a professor at a local university. Alton is doing a lot of really cool things, which we'll be doing some shows on that. And, life has been throwing some curveballs my way as well. So we do apologize that there hasn't been a lot of content flowing out. We had that great interview with Bob Defendi, and because we don't have anything out right now, we are planning to get back together. We have some interviews that are coming along. I've kind of decided I'm going to throw an episode out there and have a discussion about something that's really kind of been bugging me. Now, for all of you fans out there that have been listening to the show, I am a Star Wars fan. I am one of those individuals that really loved what George Lucas put out into the universe, put out there for us to enjoy and love and bring into our lives. And again, I've been very outspoken that I am not a Trekkie. I am not a fan of Star Trek now, which is really funny because my parents are die-hard Trekkies. But I have been a fan ever since I witnessed the masterpiece that is Empire Strikes Back on the big screen as a young child. I had a giant bucket of popcorn, and I was just like, I didn't even look down at the popcorn. I was so riveted on what was going on the screen, and I was just scooping the popcorn and just putting it into my mouth as I'm watching the scene unfold, watching, the Imperial walkers coming across the snow, the titanic battle that happens on Hoth, let alone all the other things where we see Yoda for the first time, and Luke's adventures or training, on Dagobah. And then we see what happens to Han and Leia and 3PO, and then they go to Bespin, and there's that really amazing scene there. But not only that, we also see for the first time Boba Fett. And the amazingness that is that character with so very few lines, just how he stood out and became something more than just a background character. And then there's the epic battle that we see unfold between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. And then there is the line that is delivered, that just shakes the foundation of everything we knew that was Star Wars at that point, which and also shakes Luke's foundation, to be honest, but is a really good story pivoting point for his character. Now, and that's kind of where I want to go with this episode, and please forgive me, I don't have my wonderful co-host to bounce this discussion off of. It's going to be one-sided, and I do apologize about that. I wish they were here to talk about this, but again, like I said, things have been a little crazy, but we will get back into the normal swing of things. So we now have kind of two versions of Star Wars. We have what George Lucas's, canon, which now Disney refers to as Legends. And then we have the Disney version of canon, which I'm just going to call Disney. I'm going to break this down, which is, to me, it's very disappointing. Luke Skywalker is a character that I have found fascinating. It is a character that I have related to in many ways. My life, I'll be honest, my life has had its moments, its ups and its downs. Like all of us, we've had those moments where things are just frustrating and difficult and challenging. But what sets us apart is the fact that we move through those struggles, those opportunities to grow, that's really what they are, is opportunities to grow. We don't let them crush us. We learn from them, we move forward, and we become stronger. And that's how I view Luke, in the series. That's how he appears. Here's a moment on Bespin where he loses his hand. He is defeated. He is crawled out to the edge of this walkway. He's barely grasping on by one hand, and Darth Vader delivers the death blow of all things, making him completely uncertain as to what he can believe because of what Obi-Wan has told him. And, that line, "I am your father." And maybe I have that slightly wrong. But, we know that line. And instead of becoming the victim, instead of becoming the person of like, oh my gosh, my whole entire reality is destroyed, I've lost my hand, I can't do anything, we see him return in Return of the Jedi as a full-fledged Jedi Knight. And he has a new lightsaber that is a brilliant emerald green, not the blue we've seen, and it's new, and it's his. And he is fighting off Jabba's compatriots. None of that, we see him defeat a Rancor without a lightsaber. There's a lot of amazing things we see that he comes back from. And not only that, he eventually is able to redeem his father, Anakin Skywalker, that fell to the dark side, that became the Dark Lord of the Sith that we knew of as Darth Vader. And he returns him to the light. Despite those obstacles. Even that, we see him even face an obstacle early on in A New Hope, where his mentor and guardian, Obi-Wan Kenobi, is killed before his eyes. Now, he could have given up then, like, how am I going to learn to be a Jedi? The guy that's supposed to teach me just died in front of my eyes by this monolithic Dark Lord in black armor. How do I recover from that? But he does. We see it time and time again. Not only that, we see it in the books as well, that became what's known as the extended universe. So here's a couple things. As I'm going on, this is a few things that we see. In the old canon, the George Lucas canon, Luke becomes the Grand Master of the Jedi Order. Like, here he is, Grand Master. In the Disney version, he is the former Grand Master of the Jedi Order. Two very distinctly different titles there. Not only that, he becomes the most powerful Jedi who ever lived. I'm going to keep going on these. That's in the old canon. So as we discuss this, I'm going to give the old canon version first, and then the Disney canon second. So opposed to that, he tried to rebuild the Jedi Order and failed. I mean, again, Luke has failed, but has come back. Going back over here. He could heal mortal wounds with a simple touch. Very important. We saw Rey do that in Rise of the Skywalker, but we never saw Luke do that. So moving off to the side of that, tried to teach new students and failed. We're starting to see a theme on the Disney side. They're really focusing on the failure, but never him overcoming that failure. And that's what we saw a lot from Luke in the old canon. He did fail, but he overcame that. He learned from it. He grew from it. But the Disney version of it, it doesn't seem like he ever overcame that. He ever learned. He just kept digging a hole further and further, and we'll keep going on this. All right. So, again, in the old canon, his light side aura was strong enough to make nearby Sith lose their powers. That is tremendous and amazing. His light side aura was so strong that those weaker Sith Lords that were around him lost their connection to the Force. How amazing is that? All right, so what we have across from that on the Disney side, trained new students so poorly that they destroyed his temple. Let that sink in. Old Luke from the Old Canon was so strong in the Force that it caused Sith to lose their power. On the opposite side, he trained new students so poorly they destroyed his temple. These are students, very weak in the Force. All right. This one is really cool. We saw this kind of in the video game that had Star Killer in it. So Luke from the George Lucas canon, was so strong that he could pull entire starships out of orbit with his mind. We saw, in Jedi, oh my gosh, I apologize. I'm forgetting the name of the actual game. But the Star Killer, Darth Vader's secret apprentice. In the part of the game, we see him pull a Star Destroyer out of the sky. Now, it wasn't in orbit. It was in the sky. But Star Killer was able to yank the Star Destroyer out of the sky with his Force power. Force Unleashed, I apologize. Yeah, so in Force Unleashed, he pulls a Star Destroyer that's up in the sky down to the ground. But Luke is able to pull ships from orbit down to the planet. That is amazing. So the flip side, he ran away from his mistakes. Now that's not the Luke Skywalker that I'm used to seeing. It's not the Luke Skywalker I'm used to reading about. Okay? Luke's, again back to Old Canon, his Force lightning could reduce matter to atoms. Now, some of you might be surprised by this, but Luke Skywalker did develop a light side version of Force lightning. We've seen it with the Sith Lords, where it's, them using Force lightning. But there is a light side version of it. Okay, the flip to that. Okay, Luke fled into hiding on a planet, on a distant planet that was unknown. Okay, moving back, Luke, Old Canon, he rebuilt the Jedi Order using Sith teachings. Not a lot of people know about that. He rebuilt the Jedi Order using both what he knew of the Jedi and Sith teachings. Again, moving over to Disney, he stays in hiding for many decades. I'm thinking there's about 2 decades that he was in hiding. All right. Let's see. Then, moving back to the old one, only 20 Jedi could exist at one time to prevent the dilution of the light side. So this is something that he put in place, that only 20 Jedi could exist at one time. Okay? Bouncing back to to Disney canon, he threw away his father's lightsaber. Now that moment really bugged me. Now, and this is why, because that lightsaber he lost, he redeemed his father. To me, that lightsaber, even if he never used it, would have meant everything to him. It was a last token of his father, of when his father was a good light side Jedi. But in The Last Jedi, he tosses it over his shoulder like it's nothing. That really bugged me. The other thing that bugged me is in those last 3 movies, especially The Last Jedi, we never see Luke use his lightsaber. Like, why? Why don't we see his lightsaber? Did he destroy it? Did it get destroyed? That's a really good question. We see it in the flashback, but why didn't he have it again later? Okay. All right. So back to Old Canon, he allowed the Sith to live just to keep the Force in balance. That's what it's always been about, the balance. Good and evil exist. Bad choices, good choices exist. Our life is about balance and balancing our life, and I love how Star Wars really focused on that. It wasn't about having, the light side wiping everything out. They tried that. It didn't really work. It's about balance. There is good and bad in the world, in the universe. But we see quite often, we have death and birth. Both of them have to exist in life. It's not like we can get rid of one or the other. They both have to exist. Okay, so off to balancing on that. On the other, he abandoned the Force and left the galaxy he saved to the mercy of fate. Back to Old Canon Luke. He withdrew the Jedi Order from Republic politics. Back over to Disney. Ignored the rise of the First Order and the new Sith. And then finally, he taught the Jedi how to use the dark side without succumbing to its corruption. And then back to Disney, died using Shadow Clone. So really, this is the thing that frustrates me the most with Disney's version of Luke Skywalker. And we know that Mark Hamill said, hey, fundamentally, I disagree with how you're moving forward with this character. Fundamentally, this is the man that created the visual embodiment of Luke Skywalker. He is the man that allowed us to see this character. And he ends that with, of course, I have a job to do. You're paying me to do it. I will do what is expected of me. I totally agree with Mark Hamill. This is not the Luke Skywalker that I expected to see when I watched those 3 movies. This is not the Luke Skywalker that most of us love and adore. As you can see in the 2 different canons, we have one that shows here is a man, a myth, so to say, a hero that has learned from his mistakes, that has learned from the past mistakes that the Jedi made. He has learned from what the Sith promoted and brought into being a new, stronger Jedi Order that was free of politics. That's something that they weren't free from in the past. We saw the manipulation of Palpatine that manipulated the Jedi into the war that became the Clone Wars. We saw the dogma that became in there. And one of the biggest things that Luke brought in was the fact that, love. Love was a power. Love was a strength. And this is something that Revan introduced back in the Knights of the Old Republic, because attachment was bad. But Revan disagreed with that. He believed that loving someone gave you a stronger connection to the Force, that was empowered you more. And I would have to agree. Looking at Luke in the Old Canon, you see that. We see the love that grew between him and Mara Jade, which, again, here's another character that was, she was an assassin for Palpatine. This is someone that most people would view as evil, and yet he redeems her, just like he redeemed his father. This is the Luke Skywalker that I love. This is the Luke Skywalker that speaks to me. One that loves, one that sees hope in each and every one, that carries that spark of hope. That even when he fails, and let's be honest, He does fail, but he learns from it. He grows from it. Compared to the Disney version of Luke, he messes up, he runs. He doesn't train the Jedi that well, he runs. He hides. He lets the galaxy fall to pieces. This is not the Luke Skywalker we knew. This is not the Luke Skywalker that held on to hope so tightly, believing that he could redeem his father, one of the worst villains in the galaxy, a dark Lord of the Sith. No one believed, not even Obi-Wan believed that he could be redeemed. The last person that believed that he could come back to the light was his wife, Padme, and said, there's still good in him. Even Obi-Wan didn't believe that, nor did Yoda, but his son, Luke Skywalker, did. And it's because of that hope that he carried forward. And in the extended universe books that we got, that hope, that power, that strength that is Luke Skywalker continued on. And we see this grand Jedi order that was created to protect. But at the same time, it was kept small so that it wouldn't be corrupted. And it was allowed, because we see, in the prequels and even in the books prior to that, that you couldn't learn about the dark side. It was forbidden. You would fall to its temptations, and yet Luke says, no, let's learn from this, and I will teach you how to not fall into the darkness, how to not succumb to it. But yet we see Disney, where Luke succumbs to every negative trait possible. That is not my Luke Skywalker. That is a huge disservice that Disney has done to the Star Wars universe. It is horrible. I'll be honest. It is horrible. They took characters beloved characters that we loved. Han and Leia. There's all the build up for them to be together, and then we come back and they're not even together. They're separated. They're distant. They're wishing they could be together, and yet they're not. They kill off Han Solo. In my opinion, it's an okay storyline because their son eventually comes back, but I feel like it was a waste. It's not, because he was not the Han Solo that we've come to love. He was not the Han Solo. Or even Princess Leia. Yes, she's General Organa now. But again, the thing that baffles me is we have the First Order. Again, just a repeat of what we already went through. In the books, we had different things. Yes, we had Palpatine come back, just like we sort of saw in these movies. But we had Grand Admiral Thrawn, that threat. We had several different threats instead of the same thing over and over. But they were always characters rooted in hope, that no matter how difficult things got, they would find a way to overcome them. That is not what we found in those last three movies. Instead, we found a very Mary Sue character in Rey that no matter what happened, no matter what she did, she always got through it. There were no consequences, and she always came through smelling like a rose. And I didn't like that. I'll be honest. I didn't like that. Now, I still have those movies. They're still part of my Star Wars collection. But the character of Rey doesn't strike me in the right way. And it's because there are no consequences. She's not truly learning like we saw with Luke. And we're not getting we didn't get the Luke Skywalker that we deserved. And that's sad. Now, I could understand retelling that storyline. He withdrew to learn something because he failed, and he knew he failed, and he needed to figure out what he missed. And he was on that island to learn those things so that he could come back into the light and charge forward and destroy this gathering darkness because he failed. I could accept that storyline, but he never did that. Instead, We see this shadow projection of himself. He fights Kylo Ren. He gets mad, and then he dies. There's nothing there. There's no redemption, in my opinion, because he didn't change. He didn't grow. He didn't come charging back. And it was a sad disservice to this character, of extremely sad disservice. But I digress. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about the old version of Luke versus, the old canon, of Luke, created by George Lucas, the man, the myth behind Star Wars, and Disney's version? Did you like it? Now that you know the two, are you like, wow, they really killed this character? They really just destroyed his fundamentality, or his fundamental structure. They took him from being a hero, a champion, to being a bum on some island. Or do you have a different opinion, that maybe something that I'm not seeing, something that I don't know? Let me know your thoughts. We would love to hear your thoughts. Again, thank you for hearing me out on this. I just wanted to get this out. I've had these thoughts. I've had these things rumbling in my head. I wanted to get the guys together so we could talk about it, but unfortunately, that didn't work out. But we do have some great interviews coming that we'll be pushing out here soon. Let me know your thoughts on Luke Skywalker. Let me know your thoughts on Disney's version. You can always email us at info@dungeoncrawlersradio.com or go to our Facebook page. Let us know your thoughts, your opinions. And with that said, may the Force be with you, and we'll catch you next time.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find us.
What happens when modern magic, high-tech weaponry, and an unstoppable dragon collide? Find out in the epic audiobook of A Dragon's Fate, brought to life by Daniel and Krebs. This Whitney Award finalist novel will pull you into a pulse-pounding world where a secret cabal battles for power, and a dragon could bring everything to an explosive end. Don't just hear the story. Feel the magic, the danger, and the action. Get ready for a ride you won't forget. Grab your copy of A Dragon's Fate, now available on Audible.